Hi, and welcome to the show. Rate and review at KevinMD.com/rate. Subscribe at KevinMD.com/podcast. Today in the show, we have Corinne Rao. She's an internal medicine physician. Her Kevin MD article is titled, From Science Nerd to Accomplished Ballroom Dancer, My Story as a Hospitalist. Corinne, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Kevin. Thank you for having me.
So you're an internal medicine physician. So tell me a little bit about your story and journey to where you are today.
Yes. So I started as an internal medicine physician for several years doing traditional internal medicine practice, which involved taking care of the entire breadth of internal medicine, taking care of your patients, not just in the clinic, but when they get admitted to the hospital, being in a call group with other internal medicine physicians. And I feel like I was fortunate to have that experience. However, it got to the point where it was just unsustainable. The amount of time that it required was something that wasn't possible to do. So I started looking at other options and I decided I'm going to become a hospitalist. And that's what I did for the last 8 to 9 years. Very much enjoyed hospital medicine. It's challenging, it's fast paced, and I loved it and still do. Through the COVID pandemic, things were very busy. And as I looked around, I saw other physicians, even before that, but more so after that, getting more and more tired, more discouraged, feeling like they were stuck, didn't have options. And I started thinking, why is that? And I think a lot of it may have to do with what do we do with ourselves when we're not at work? And do we have something that sustains us, keeps us going? So, one of the things it led me to was to not work full time for any hospital system, but just kind of go out on my own as an independent contractor. And so, usually the options when you do that is go through a locums company and find a position and go work there. And then this crazy idea came to me. What if I just contact the hospitals directly and eliminate the locums company and see where I get? And it worked for me. And then that led me to, I wanted to help other physicians kind of know that this is something they could explore doing and it would help them and the hospitals. So I created my startup company several months ago, and it's exactly for this purpose. So that's kind of where I am. I set my own schedule. I have a few hospitals that I work for or contract with, and it gives me a lot of flexibility.
So in a typical week, how many hours do you work?
So it actually varies from month to month, Kevin, because there are some months where I will only pick up 9 to 10 shifts. There are other months where there's more shifts available, and I'm willing to do them. I'm ready to do them, and I do more. So it's up and down. It's definitely not like a 7 on 7 off schedule, which I have my reservations about that anyway. So it's really nice to have the autonomy to pick what I want to do and when I want to do it.
And how many hospitals do you typically contract with at one time?
So you always want to have more than one option because, they may recruit or just things may go away. And that's kind of the risk you take as being a not full-time employee. So I have 4 hospitals that I'm privileged with, and I'm currently working on a 5th.
So when you directly reached out to the hospital outside of a locums company, what was their reaction when you first contacted them?
So it turns out that a lot of them are not really aware or know that, this exists. They're so used to either just recruiting for full-time physicians or immediately turning to a locums company. And because I have a network of colleagues, physicians, I used those contacts to get me in touch with the people that make decisions. And they were open-minded and willing to listen and give me a shot. And then I started learning about the business side, like, contracts, what I'm signing, carrying my own malpractice, and all of that.
So on a typical contract when you're in a hospital, how long is that typically?
So it's very flexible. You're not committing to X number of shifts per month. If you leave, both you or the hospital has a 30-day out. So it's very flexible, gives you a lot of options, and that's kind of the typical contract. There's no number of hours you have to meet.
Now, you're a hospitalist. Does this also apply to primary care? Can primary care physicians also directly reach out to hospital groups or private practices and arrange something similar?
Absolutely, Kevin. There are lots of clinics and outpatient practices that have gaps in coverage, or while they're waiting to recruit, or somebody had an emergency and has been out. And absolutely, I think that's something that on the outpatient side not only can be done, but I would strongly encourage physicians to look into that.
All right. So let's talk about your KevinMD article now, co-written with Erin Morgenstein. It's titled From Science Nerd to Accomplished Ballroom Dancer, My Story as a Hospitalist. Now, how did this article come together?
So for many years, I've had this passion for learning ballroom dancing. I grew up in India and there was absolutely no opportunities for me to do any kind of dance or anything in the performing arts. Fast forward several years and I decided, you know what, why not? And so I've been in the dance world for a few years now. I met Aaron online through some online physician spaces, and he has a passion for direct contracting as well.
Mhm.
And he encouraged me to write about my story. And so that's what I did. And Aaron has helped me to write my story, and you helped you published it, for which I'm very grateful and thankful.
Yeah, and now you're here on the podcast. We're going to talk about that. So tell me about how does ballroom dancing or your background in ballroom dancing, how does that influence you as a physician?
Kevin, I cannot tell you how much it's a part of my life. And I think for me, the most important thing is when I step into the dance studio, I leave behind anything else, my previous work week, whatever happened there, any other worries or concerns I'm carrying, it just drops away. And I spend all that time just immersed in learning how to dance
And how often do you dance or how often do you practice?
as often as I can. So over the last 3 years, I actually am going out of town to this teacher that I found. So I actually traveled to Chicago, and I know this sounds a little bit over the top, but he's a extremely good teacher, somebody that I wanted to work with. He's well known in the ballroom dance world. So I try to make that trip a couple of times a month. If I can, then more.
And do you dance competitively?
Yes.
Eh,
So there's many ways to do ballroom dancing. You can do socially, you can learn to social dance. You can go to group parties, group classes. I learned about the competitive world of ballroom dancing and I wanted to do it. And that's what we do. So every week or weekend, there's 2 or 3 competitions going on in some part of the country, believe it or not. And you can do as much or as little as you want to.
So let me ask a prior question in a different way. Has your background as a physician, has that helped you or hurt you or affected you in any way as a competitive ballroom dancer?
This is a tough one. So actually, I thought that, it would be easier, but it was exactly the opposite. I'm very good at learning like medicine. It just comes to me. I can look at a page and I remember it. That's how I get through med school. It just makes sense. It comes to me. With dance, not so much. I found myself struggling with all kinds of things, musicality, the posture, the timing, just it didn't come easily to me. Um, so whether my background helped me, I don't know, but the discipline definitely does because we have a lot of discipline when we're going through med school, and in ballroom dancing, especially when you're trying to compete, you have to have the same.
Now, did you start from scratch? I don't remember if you said that earlier. Did you have, when you were younger, did you have a background in dance?
I did not. I grew up in India, and there was no opportunities there. So yeah, I started in my adult from scratch, not knowing anything about it.
And how long did it take you before you were able to compete and dance competitively?
So actually, I entered my first competition pretty soon after I started dancing because there are levels that you can do and there are newcomer levels, etc. However, I feel that over the last couple of years, I'm getting a little bit more competitive. Previously, I felt like I was just so happy to just even be part of it, be in this glamorous world that I didn't put as much effort into practicing as I could have and should have. And now I feel like I definitely want to do that. And that's what I'm doing.
So take us into one of those competitions. I've seen certainly movies and TV shows about this. So as a competitive ballroom dancer and starting from scratch, what's it like? Take us into one of those competitions. What's it like for you?
So, Kevin, these competitions can run from a few days to even a 1 day competition. If it runs for a few days, they'll have different styles on different days because there are different styles within the ballroom dance world. They usually start, believe it or not, early in the morning because there's so many competitors, there's so many heats, and they have to get everybody in. So basically, you're in a ballroom. It's decorated very nicely. There's lights, there's music, there's judges with clipboards that actually mark you. And there's an MC who announces each heat. And then it basically goes all day. And in the evenings, they have the professionals usually, which is just something that is amazing to watch. Every time I watch that, I'm just blown away by how good they are. So, and then you just get up the next day and repeat. Depends on how many styles you're competing in. I currently compete in 3 styles. There are dress vendors there are hair and makeup vendors, because you have to have a certain look when you're doing this. Mm-hmm. And for me, working in scrubs the rest of the time, it's a treat to be in a completely different world.
One of the things you said earlier is that when you practice or begin ballroom dancing, that whole world of medicine completely melts away. Why is that important for you to get away from medicine?
It's so important because if I don't have that, I just don't know how I would keep going and taking care of my patients. If my brain and my mind didn't have that time to decompress, it's just I don't know how people do it. I don't know how physicians do it. So I think it's extremely important to have a passion which takes you away from the world of medicine for a little bit.
And then after you say go away for a competition and then come back to medicine, do you feel recharged, refreshed? Does that affect you in any way as a physician?
I do feel recharged and refreshed, and I'm absolutely ready to get back into the hospital.
Now, when you talk to your other physician colleagues, and I know you talk to a lot of physicians in terms of what you do with your company and just among your local colleagues, do you find that a lot of them have a passion outside of clinical medicine like you do?
Kevin, some of them do. There are physicians who are doing things, whatever it might be, playing golf, tennis. Some of them are, runners. They take part in marathons. They'll have different passions, traveling. But there are quite a few actually that do not. They work their 7 days on as a hospitalist, and the 7 days they have off, a lot of it, they tell me, is time just spent recovering from the 7 days they worked and catching up. And before you know it, those 7 days are over and they don't have something else to turn to.
When you were telling your story, you said one thing that caught my ear. You said that it's very difficult for physicians to practice full time these days. Why do you think that is?
I think it comes down to the fact that it takes away our autonomy. We're working on somebody else's schedule. We have no control over our time. And I think lack of autonomy and lack of flexibility is the biggest cause of what physicians are facing right now with the burnout, moral injury, and all of that.
There are a lot of physicians, however, that they have a lot of debt, right, or they have a mortgage to pay, and they may not be financially available to work less than full time. What kind of advice do you have for them? Because for them, they're kind of stuck practicing full time and expose themselves to burnout and moral injury. What kind of tips and advice do you have for these physicians who cannot cut back?
So you don't actually have to cut back. That's the amazing thing about this. I can work the same full-time hours I was as a hospitalist if I want to. And there are some months when I've actually done 15, 16 shifts, just like I did when I was full-time. So just because you're not full-time employed doesn't mean you have to make less money. And it doesn't mean you have to work less than full-time. It's very flexible. You dictate your schedule. You decide for yourself what you want, how much you want to do, and then you go out and find it.
Now, are there some areas of the country that's more amenable to this direct contracting versus some other parts of the country?
Kevin, I found that in general, the bigger hospital systems in the bigger metro areas, it would be harder to try to do something like that. Quite simply only because I think, they have enough physicians. They're not hurting for filling gaps and things. So I think and usually they all have a relationship with some big locums group or company, and that's what they turn to. Other than that, I think if you're open to being in a smaller to mid-size or even a rural community, you're going to find those doors are opening up much more easier.
We're talking to Corinne Rao. She's an internal medicine physician. Her KevinMD article is titled From Science Nerd to Accomplished Ballroom Dancer, My Story as a Hospitalist. Corinne, what do you say to those physicians who say, I don't have a passion. I've spent the last 15, 20 years going through medical school and residency and going through my job. I just didn't have time to invest in a passion and I don't know where to start. What do you say to those physicians who just don't know where to start and don't know what that next step is?
I would say for them to look around. Talk to your other physician colleagues or talk to your non-physician friends, actually. Just look around and be open. You might find something that you never thought would interest you and try out different things and you might be surprised.
Now, you are, of course, a competitive ballroom dancer. You mentioned golf. What are some examples of other passions that you've heard physicians delving into outside of clinical medicine?
I've heard all kinds of things. I've heard people doing, a lot of traveling, sailing, all kinds of competitive sports, painting, other forms of art. There's a lot of options out there, decorating, interior designing, writing, all kinds of things.
Now, there are some people, some patients, and physicians for that matter, who feel that doctors should only do medicine 100% of the time. And if they have a passion that's not clinical medicine, maybe that makes them a little bit less of a doctor in their eyes. No, what do you say to someone who thinks like that, someone with that mindset?
I haven't had to directly encounter that because any physician or patient even that has heard this somehow has always been very positive about it and wanting to know more. I would tell them if there was somebody that questioned that, I would just tell them that it actually helps me to be a better doctor and take better care of you because I'm also a human being and everybody needs something which gives them a little rest, a little break away from their normal job. So it actually makes me a better physician.
And my final question, Corinne, just tell us some of your take-home messages that you want to leave with the KevinMD audience.
Kevin, I want to tell the audience that if there is something that you wanted to do, do not wait. Just jump into it, do it. Don't wait. Don't wait for the time to be right. Be open to possibilities. Don't feel stuck. There's a lot of things out there. There's people you can meet, and your world can be just completely different. So that would be my take-home message.
Corinne, thank you so much for sharing your story time and insight, and best wishes on the dance floor.
Thank you, Kevin. It's been great to talk to you.